Welp, it's lots more than the other place, but it'll do. Right, got the Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC set up. I guess I should work on the next video. Dark Souls? Nah, too long. Days by Daylight? Not feeling it. I need something more optimistic in town. Maybe a platformer. Ah, that's a good one. There was a time in the 90s and early 2000s when everyone wanted to create the next Mario or Sonic. Most tried the anthropomorphic character, cause that seemed to work for Sonic. One of the well-known ones, in my opinion, is characters like Blinks or Bubsy. Ironically, both cats, and they didn't do very well either. So, I guess cats really aren't the most popular when it comes to video game protagonists, but that's a story for a different day. We're here to talk about the Xbox mascots. The specific one being Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, a character created in Australia by Australians and had a very aggressive marketing scheme, one somewhat similar to what Crash did for the PlayStation, except targeted to almost every other character in existence. Ironically, except for Mario. Mostly just Spyro, Crash, and Sonic. Jokers. Developed by Chrome Studios and published by EA in 2002, the Tenacious Tiger had a rather unique marketing idea, taking inspiration from the aforementioned Crash Bandicoot advertisements. And, well, here, take a look. It's better you see it than I try to explain it.
There's a new hero out there, and he's not gonna let anyone stand in his way. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Rated E for everyone. EA Games. Challenge everything.
Yeah, they had high hopes for this little guy. Although it didn't quite reach the heights that they were expecting, such as not even getting anywhere close to where Crash or Spyro were at that time, but the little tiger did end up with a interesting tetralogy of games. For those who are curious, a tetralogy is the next step up from a trilogy. The last installment of the original trilogy, however, came out in 2005. Okay, cutting in right here to let people know about a little fun thing I didn't realize until I did some research after this. The original Ty games were actually using a modified version of the Mario Sunshine engine, which is a rather interesting little bit of information if you ask me. Afterwards, the Ty franchise would be silent for a while. The company who developed it, Chrome Studios, would go on to develop the Legend of Spyro trilogy and work on the PlayStation 2 and PSP ports of Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, which, I'll be honest, are pretty good games in my opinion. However, on the 10th anniversary of Ty's existence, the developers released a iOS game called Boomerang Blast, which had the players in control of Ty in a first-person view and were tasked with throwing boomerangs at wooden enemies and objects. Later, about 3 years later, in 2013, they released Ty 4, a 2D side-scroller similar in vein to the Game Boy ports of Ty 2 and 3. Later it was released on Steam. 3 years later, in 2016, however, the Ty franchise got a bit of a facelift with the HD remaster, which not only got a Steam port, but also a PlayStation and Switch port as well. But enough about the history of the game. Let's actually get into the story. Ty's one story is a rather simple little bit of information, which I'll explain right now. Boss Cass, an angry bird who hates mammals, plans to use a magic talisman to send all the mammals in the world into an alternative reality so he and the lizards can rule. He is stopped by Ty's parents and other Tasmanian tigers, who are sadly sucked into the portal that Boss Cass opened anyway. Several years later, a young Ty, while playing with his friend/adopted family, falls down into a hole and meets with the spirit of an elder bunyip, who tells Ty about Cass and that he has to stop Cass from gathering the talismans and sending all the remaining mammals into the alternative reality. Ty also wishes to save his mother and father that were also trapped there, which is where our journey begins. Right, we might as well talk about the controls now, shall we? You got the basic control options when it comes to the PC version. You got the keyboard and mouse or the controller. Assuming that I'm using the Steam version with the Nintendo Switch controller, which, probably is going to piss off somebody, I'll go into explaining the controller method of control scheme instead of the keyboard and mouse. You have your standard controls for a collectathon platformer, moving with the left stick and camera control with the right stick. The A button is used for jumping. While Ty has 2 boomerangs, he can do a small glide if you press down the A button after jumping. The X button allows Ty to throw boomerangs, and the B button allows Ty to do a bat attack, which can be used as a homing attack on certain objects and enemies. The Y button allows you to interact with NPCs in levels, objects, and exclusively in the HD version can bring up a boomerang wheel, which helps with selecting boomerangs a lot quicker. The left trigger button allows you to go into a first-person view, which is useful for aiming boomerangs in a more accurate method. The right trigger button allows you to lock on to a target, which isn't as useful, as the boomerangs have a somewhat homing edge to them anyway. The right bumper doesn't really do anything, while the left bumper allows you to change the distance that the camera is looking at. The other notable key controls would be the left and right D-pads, which allow you to switch between boomerangs on a preset method, which was the original method of switching between boomerangs in the original game. Okay, let's get into the collectibles now. In total, there are 7 different collectibles. The first being opals. Opals are the equivalent to coins or music notes. Collect 300 in each level and you'll be able to get a Thunder Egg. The Thunder Eggs are the equivalent to stars or jiggies. Besides collecting 300 opals in each level, you can also collect a Thunder Egg by completing a task, finding them hidden in levels, or completing races. The other method is by collecting 5 bilbies who are trapped in cages. Now, the bilbies are the equivalent to, say, Jinjos from Banjo-Kazooie, which means there are 5 of them in each level, and once you collect each 5, again, you get a Thunder Egg. Technically, you don't need every single Thunder Egg to complete the game, but they're not too hard to collect, so might as well gather them all. Another major collectible is the 5 talismans, which require the eggs, which are powered with a machine which helps collect them. From there, you need to take down a boss fight, which then allows you to collect said talisman. The other major collectible are the golden cogs. There are 5 cogs per level, and once you've collected 15, you can trade them in for a bonus boomerang. Some have more useful effects than others, but I'd say go for them anyway, as they are rather useful depending on the fight that you're in. The last 2 collectibles aren't that important, except for true 100% completion. In the hub area, you have to collect rainbow scales, which once collected give you an extra few hit points of health, and the other collectible is picture frames, which are used to unlock concept art and extras, which technically aren't considered 100% completion, but for true collectors, they are hidden in invisible boxes, which are scattered around levels. Before I get into the levels themselves, there are a few small couple of extras I'd like to mention that the HD remaster contains. There's nothing game-breaking, the boomerang wheel obviously, but one of the other little fun things they added was the cosmetic outfits for Ty, which include a few spoiler characters and a prototype version of Ty himself, a wetsuit and a ghost form, which again are all just cosmetic and don't really have any gameplay benefits, although you will see me changing into these outfits just for level consistency if the level has more water in it than not. Ty has a total of 16 levels. There are a grand total of 2,700 opals, 90 golden cogs, 72 thunder eggs, 373 picture frames, and 45 bilbies, as well as the aforementioned 5 talismans. The first 3 talismans have levels attached to them, 3 each. The first level lets you learn the controls and gain Ty's second boomerang, as well as meet a couple of the recurring characters that you'll meet along the way. Our first character is Murray, the sulfur-crested cockatoo, who's basically a tutorial bird, along with a scientist-savvy koala named Julius, who is the inventor of the device that allows Ty to get from level to level. The other characters we get to meet in the first level are the Frills, Boss Cass's troops, and grunts. The second level, A Walk in the Park as it's titled, shows off the forest environment, as well as the water slide mechanic, which shows up only a few times. Giant spiders and slugs can be found here, which can be taken out with bite attacks. The characters we meet here include Ranger Ken, Tasmanian Devil, Shazza the Dingo, and Andy the Wombat, who all have things they need help with, from saving some bats from a water-flooded cave, to stopping blue-tongued lizard enemies from interfering with car repairs, and starting a bit of a friendly rivalry with Andy, who always seems to lose. Level 3, Shipwrecks, is a first experience with the swimming, and it's not too bad if a bit overwhelming at first. There are some finicky things you have to do, such as throwing a boomerang into a shipwreck, which is very prompted, and using giant coconuts to traverse quicksand. You'll meet Rex, the platypus, who the level is so titled after, who wants you to help find his wife, while he sits on his ass and teaches you how to swim, until you have to race him, which, when he does, goes to the top of the mountain where his wife is, who is Ellie, who is also a platypus, obviously. Throughout the level, you'll also meet a seahorse named Aurora, who has lost her babies, which Ty offers to help, and you also encounter Frills wearing scuba masks. After collecting enough Thunder Eggs and helping those who need it, we get to fight our first boss. This is your typical large charging enemy type fight, with the boss being literally just a bull. Stand in front of pillars and move out of the way so he can take damage, and you're done. And the first talisman is yours. Later on in a later level, you get to use him as a rideable mount in the level Outback Safari, which is a rather long and drawn out level. Okay, on to our level 4, Bridge over the River Ty. This level makes use of our newly acquired Flame Boomerang as you light torches for another new character, Dennis the Green Tree Frog, the franchise's resident scaredy cat, who, and I quote, is allergic to gas. Another character we get to meet who only shows up here is Nettie, who works as a mini-boss and isn't much trouble. The true trouble comes in the form of two birds running around, tossing a Thunder Egg between each other. You have to knock them both down to be able to get the Thunder Egg from them, which is a bit fiddly, as well as a golden cog, which is better collected once you obtain the Frost Boomerang. Our 5th level is Outback Safari, which has us riding the bull boss as a mount around a road area. It is simple premise, but has the collectathon issue of where the did I leave that last opal? Which a few of these levels did have the similar issue with, but that's nothing to worry about. You can easily leave the level and the opal is returned to the box they would have originally been in. Shazza and Ranger Ken show up again and need a couple bits of help here and there, which is, pretty easy to do. Level 6, Snow Worries, is the first winter level and is quite wide and open, having an entire snow mountain that you can climb and a frozen lake you can swim under. You also run into Sheila, the koala, who has lost her children when they went playing in the snow. While they're easy to find, the true challenge is climbing the wood-cutting chutes and avoiding the saws, which is quite tricky. The second boss that we fight is Crikey, the tiger shark. While he may be a bit confusing at first, you just gotta pull the jaws by knocking some oxygen tanks up onto the floating of the water, and then throw some flame boomerangs as he chomps on them. Once you do that, he's a pushover, and is set free from Cast's control, and the second talisman is yours. Level 7, Liar Liar Pants on Fire, spelled with a Y, not an I, is the introduction to two characters of interest. Lenny the Lyrebird, who, as his name states, is a terrible liar, and Sly, another Tasmanian tiger that Cass has allied with, who basically acts like a less interesting Shadow the Hedgehog. Other than that, not much to say about this level, besides the fact that you can cheese him by quick switching between the flame and frost boomerangs, but do that if you want. Beyond the Black Stump, our 8th level in the game is a retread of Snow Worries, except instead of wood-cutting mountains, it's a skiing lodge, and the first area is partly on fire. You got Sheila, who's lost her kids again, and Ranger Ken, who has some trouble with frills harassing ski lifts, and you got another race with Andy, which is easily won. The final level, Rex Marks the Spot, is a treasure hunt level, having you follow Wedgwood the pirate, who left messages in treasure chests to find a Thunder Egg, as well as help Rex and Ellie steal some treasure from an octopus, as well as destroy some ships that are bothering Aurora and are dumping waste into the water that she's living in. After collecting those Thunder Eggs in those levels, we get to fight our third boss, who is a giant robot yeti named Robo-Fluffy, who is piloted by the actual Fluffy, who is, and I quote, a species called a thorny devil. Attacking the robot requires burning the fur on its body, then using jets of flames to melt it into the ice, which results in the robot getting stuck and Fluffy fleeing the area. And now it's time for our final 3 areas, those being Cass Pass, Cass Crest, and the boss Cass Fight. The first 3 areas are rather simple though. A walk through a jungle type area, and then a mini boss fight with a character named Shadow the Ghost Bat, who is taken down by a bloody steam. Having a momentary run-in with Sly, who decides to change his tone after we save him from falling into lava in a cutscene. We get to the final boss with Cass, which is rather underwhelming. Throwing frost boomerangs at flamethrowers and then biting them to destroy them, then throwing some boomerangs at wires to disable the robot. Then Sly decides to show up and give us a boomerang which we can control directly. And then from inside there we destroy the machine, and that's the end of the game. Ty frees his family, and that's it. Ty 1 is wrapped up and done. While a somewhat flawed game, with very simple gameplay elements, the foundation for a charming franchise is there, and obviously it developed into a trilogy of games that had such a dedicated fan base that they were able to create a remaster of all 3 games, which not many games get these days. It takes a huge amount of support, nostalgia, and interest to bring back a game in the way that they did. And my hopes is that they get the opportunity to create a 5th or 4th game, depending on how you view the 2D game that came out classing itself as Ty 4. But that's all I really got to say for this. If you ever find a chance to get it, or if it's on sale, I'd say buy it on Steam if you can. Or if you want to, support them on the Switch as well. They seem to got a port on there. I may want to get that myself to see if they have any sort of Switch implemented controls for the Joy-Cons. But anyway, thank you for watching and hope you all have a good time. Bye now.